Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're set this Makkot stuff Yud Zayin. We're going to begin on Tes Zayin Amud Beis by the two dots. Oichel Tevel Meiserisha and V'chulu. So this goes back to Daf Yud Gimel when it discusses certain sins that a person will be Chai Malchus for. If a person will eat Tevel, non-tithe foods, or Meiserisha shall not Trumasoi. So you didn't take off the truma, or meiser sheni, the hektish shel niftu. So these are cases in which you'll be chayev, and kami yoichel min atevel v'hechayev. So Rav Shimon says even the smallest amount. Chacham says is a kazayas. We'll get to that soon. So Amarav ochel tevel shel meiser ani. Let's say a person just didn't take off on years 3 or 6 the meiser ani. So he's still going to get malchus for that loika. Come on, ki haitan. The san yom Rav Yosi yochel yechayev elad al hatevel shulhor mimenu koleker. Maybe the only time a chayev is dafka if it's totally untied, didn't separate anything. Hor mimenu truma gadol. Let's say you separated the 2% you gave to the kohen. Hor mimenu meiserishin, give the 10% meiserishin, did that. Vol meiser sheni. The afil meiser ani menayin talmud lormu suchalecha v'sharacha v'gaimer. It says can't eat it in your gate. Lo sochalecha b'sharach, and I'll eat it in your gates. Laholad oimer v'ochel b'sharach v'saveyu. Eat it and be satiated. Malholad meiser ani. You have kan meiser ani. Yermachman lo suchal. So we have a loisa say with regard to meiser ani, and therefore that comes to tell us that taka the din is yechayev even if you're eating tevel. The only thing was not separated was meiser ani. The truth is, what we just said is a machlokas tanoi. Rabbi Lezer says that you do not need to designate the name al meiser ani shel damai. Now, what exactly is that referring to? So we know that damai in general is something in which it's questionable whether or not it was separated. So you don't need to designate that this is meiser ani. When it comes to tevel, if we're unsure, so you don't have to do it. So this is a cool of Rabbi Lezer. Chachamim oimrim, as we continue to Yud with Aleph, kaira. It's a shame. You do need to call it meiser ani. V'intzarech lahafresh. But once you call it by that, that's it. You don't have to do any more. So my law, b'hakim ifli. Well, this is the Havamim. The Mar Savar vade toivlo, Mar Savar vade eina toivlo. So maybe this is Gufo the Machlokas. That according to one, Vadai, it's definitely considered to be Tevel. The other one says if it's definitely not taken off, it's not Tevel. So he said there's a din of Tevel by Meiser Ani. Maybe it's not true. Maybe the fact that Rabbi Lezer holds that in Sarachlikos is the shame al Meiser Ani Shidamai must be because he holds that when it comes to Meiser Ani, which is Vadai, so then it's definitely not a problem. So this is actually going to be question TB18. What's the reason Rabbi Lezer in the Havamina? So Imu Mafresh Meiser Ani Zeh Lo Tevel B'Havamina. Right? It sounds like it's not going to be Tevel. So that's part of the answer. It's TB18. Where it says, I understand. Why is he talking about Tevel, which is not sure? Talk about Vadai, that you know for sure it wasn't taken off, whether it's a problem. Certainly, as we said before, it's definitely Tevel. So according to Belezer, he holds that we don't assume that the Amarts didn't take off the Meiser Ani, therefore we're not concerned. Since it's his money, Afrushi Mafresh, he certainly will have separated it. So what is going on over here? So Rashi says like this. Because it's considered like his money. Ein bo isra chila el gezalanim, v'ihu ligzalanim l'chayish. So this is the whole point. Meiser ani, maybe it's not an isra chila, it's an isra of stealing. So it doesn't belong to you, but he doesn't care about that. So the question is that since it's his money, he may be mafresh it, and he just won't give it to the ani. So maybe he'll just do that, and therefore that's the reason why we're not chayish that an Amma Arts didn't separate it. We assume that he probably was mafresh. Says Rashi, Afrushi mafresh le lafuke tivla, to at least remove the issue of tevel, he'll do that. Now, nihi de meiser shalom mafresh, my meiser he may not, because summer imafreshinale be'ene lafreshin trumas meisim ene shehut b'misa b'nois l'koyin and meiser sheni nami. Okay. Anyway, so when it comes to meiser ani, he may separate it. And that's not the problem. He just may keep it for himself. This is the maskana. Aval maskana zet tevel koliyam. Aval hoyil b'safik demai yochel likach hasameiser anil atzmai ha'am aretz mafresh as la'atzmai. He's not afraid. Odilma hu lo yiratza litroyach as atzmai. That's the according to the Rabbanan Shita. All right. So that is the explanation. Okay, weiter. And then we said in the conclusion of this Mishnah, Yud Gimel, Kami Yoichem and a Tavel v'Gomer, is it a Mashahu or is it a certain shear? So Amar Rabbi Bar Amar Rab Shimon Malachish Machloikis Bechita. The whole Machloikis, when it comes to wheat kernel, is if it's wheat, it's an actual kernel because it's like complete, it's full. Of a bekemach, if it's ground up flour, Divrei Kol Kazayis. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Rab Shimon Ben Malachish Machloikis Bazu Kach Machloikis Bazu. Also, the machlokas is by flour. It's the same thing. It's the same machlokas. Tanan. Armalhan Rabbi Shimon. That if you would eat an ant, a full ant, kol shehu chayev, neshu kibur yasa. That's because it's a complete entity. It doesn't have to have a shear of kazayas. So Armalhan afchita achas kibur yasa. So to wheat also it's a whole. So chitin kemachlo. So chayra, it's a kasha because we see clearly it's dafka by chita, but not by kemach. Right? It says no, not necessarily. Maybe it's also by kemach. L'devarehim karmelhu. L'didi, according to me, I feel kemach nami. Even kemach also the smallest amount. If you at least admit the chita achas kibir yasa, that a wheat kernel, at least agree with me with regard to that. Rabbanan biris neshama chashuva, chita chashuva. There's a difference between a wheat kernel and an ant because there's no neshama, there's nothing breathing in there, so it's not a davar chashuv like an ant. Talik about the Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Koshul Makkos, Vo Noster Kazai, still Indian carbon. Rabbi Shimon says that even the smallest amount you'll be chayiv Makkos. The only reason why we have the shear is for a carbon. Says Rashi, Vo Kazai, still Indian carbon al shkogus kares. In that situation, if you're b'shoigeg, it's a halacha Moshe Sinai, then it has to be a shear. TA 18. Madua ha'oichel chita achas shel tevel rabban enochai mishum beria. So brias neshama chashiva chita lo chashiva. Okay. Right. Okay, we just finished one Mishnah. Let's see the next one now. Says the Masisin ha'oichel bikurim. Person who eats the first fruits, ad shul karlein, before you read upon it the decoration of a Rami Ovid Avi. So you're going to be chayiv. The question is, where do we see that? We're going to talk about it. Kodshei Kedoshim. When it comes to Kodshei Kedoshim, like an oila, shlomim, chutzah kilayim, if it was taken outside of the curtain around the chutzah, or for that matter, Kedoshim kalim, like a shlomim or bechor, meiser behemo, meiser sheni, chutzah chayma. So they have to be within the wall of Yerushalayim. Let's say that was brought outside, or for that matter, hashavres etzem b'Pesach, someone who breaks a bone of the carbon Pesach, hatahar harizeh loik arboim. So in all these cases, you get malchus. Avol hamayser b'tahar, one who leaves it over, which is a din of nicer. So we're going to see you don't get malchus. The lava netaglasei. V'hashoiver b'tamei, or you break the bone b'tamei with regard to what's tamei, ain't no like arbaim. It's only b'tahara you're chayev. Hanoitel aim al abanim, which you saw before. So the mitzvah of shilach hakain, of sending away the mother bird. Let's say you didn't do it. You took the mother with the children. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer like Mishalom. He holds it's considered to be a lav shekadmu aseh when it says shalach to shalach, and therefore you're chai malchus. However, because it's considered a lava nitak aseh, because it's telling you what to remedy it by saying shalach to shalach as aim. You can send the mother bird away even afterwards. Anytime you can find again a situation of a lava nitak aseh, then you don't get malchus. Says the Gemara. This is Rabbi Akiva. The only thing that's ma'akev is only the actual hanacha, the placing it down. However, not in front of the mizbeach. That is what's ma'akev. But the decoration is not ma'akev. And therefore, even if, let's say, you ate the bikurim were consumed before the kriya, that doesn't matter, because kriya is not ma'akev. Why do we say this is according to the Shita of Rabbi Akiva? Maybe it's Rav Shimon. Says Rashi, so why don't we say like him? We're going to see Rav Shimon later on, I think on Zav Chav. So Hakamashmal under Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon severely. Just hold that Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rabbi Shimon. So my Rabbi Shimon, Desanya, Uchumas Yadcha. When the pasuk says Uchumas Yadcha, the end of the pasuk, same for the Haikra, Rashi says, L'sucha lechel b'sharecha, that you're not able to eat it in your gates, only in your shalayim, namely the master digancha v'tirashka v'sarecha, which is referring to the Meiser Sheni of the wine, oils, and grains. Or your cattle, okay. So Elu Bikurim. Rav Shimon, Ma Bazel Mante. What's coming to tell us? If it's telling you that you're not allowed to eat it outside of the walls, so certainly you can't, because even by Meiser Sheni, which is more kal, which we're not sure exactly why it's more kal, maybe we'll get to it, the din is that it cannot be eaten outside the walls, so certainly Bikurim. So if they get malchus for Meiser Sheni by eating it outside of the walls, certainly by Bikurim. So it's adding something else, that even if you end up eating the Bikurim before you made the decoration. What it's going to tell you regarding a carbon titan and a shlom, which are kedashim kalim, that if you can't eat meiser sheni outside of the walls, and certainly you can't eat karbanos. That you have to wait until after the zrika sadam. But if it was eaten before the zrika sadam, you're chayiv. Again, that's also Kedashim Kalam. That even after Zrika, if you would eat it, you will be chayv. Which of course is referring to Kedashim, Kashi Kedashim. So Amar Rav Shimon man bazel mantenu. Imachim chasol chayma kabel chayma ma'meiser. Certainly you can't eat chatas and ashim chutzol chayma. If nezri kabel chayma b'tad b'sham. Ilach nezri kabel chayma b'chor. Halu ba kasav el achol machatas ashim. If you achas zrika, which is the proper time, but it's chutzol kilayim shehu loika. When it comes to Kadashim, it has to be within the kilayim. It has to be within that fenced that area, which is within the mikdash. Nidarcha zu oila. So this is like the highest carbon, which is completely burned. Amar Shimon ma bazel amantenu. Imach chutzol chayim kabacham meiser. Imach nizrika kabacham matayv v'shlom. Imach nizrika kabacham b'char. Im chutzol kilayim. So, which is another Kachik Kadashim. So, Kavachayim Mechatas Ashim. You're not allowed to even eat it. So, what do you mean? Right? So, Halabah Kosiv, as we continue in Zainam and Beis, the pasuk is El Oichel Min Oila Le'achas Richa Fil Bifnim Shuhulaika. That even in the Azara, in the right place, at the right time, everything, you're still going to be like it because it's cold, it's supposed to be completely burnt up. And Rashi says over here, Le'echel Oila Fil Le'achas Richa Fil Kayin Shuhulaika. Because you're not allowed to eat on oil, ever. Omer Rabba, Diyal De'ime, Rav Shimon, Thailand. If a mother can give birth like Rav Shimon, let her give birth. V'ilo lo soilin. Now, to let it be that a woman should only be able to give birth to someone as great as him. V'yavagad de'islahu pircha. Even though there are questions on this Kal V'chomer, nonetheless, it's still Git Gezot. So why? So my chomer the bikurim. We said that bikurim is more chomer than memaiser. Why? Shekin asun muzar, because when it comes to bikurim, a non-kohen cannot eat bikurim. It's given to the kohen. Meiser sheni you can eat in Yerushalayim, even a zar. So adarabah meiser chomer shekin asul einin. When it comes to meiser sheni, we're strict that an einin cannot eat it. However, he's allowed to eat bikurim. When it comes to Taid and Shlom, which are karbanos, you do zrika sadam, so that's more chamer, in its sacrificial parts. When it comes to Meiser Sheni, it requires a kesef surah. It has to be a particular coin. Says Rashi, when you want to be poided, it says v'sarta kesef biyadcha davar sheish lav tsura. Has to have some type of form, but we don't have that din when it comes to being poided, toid and shlomim. It has to have a tsura. My churma de bechor metoid of shlomim shekein kedushas v'rechem. A bechor is already kaddish automatically from the womb, which is the whole discussion. Fine. By that's when it comes to bechor. Adarabba, Taid v'Shlomim chamurim sheken tun and smicha nesachim tenufas chaz v'shaik. Now, when it comes to Taid v'Shlomim, so even though it's kadashim kalim, it requires smicha. You have to rest your hands on the animal. It requires libations, waving of the chaz v'shaik. So my chumer dechatas v'ashim b'bechor, which again chatas and ashim are kachi kadashim, sheken kachi kadashim. Adarabba b'chor chamor shechein kedushas merechem. B'chor is kodesh merechem, as we said, it's automatic. Ma'achor mede oil machatas v'asham shechein koil, because when it comes to an asham, it's completely burnt on the mizbech. Adarabba chatas asham chamiri shechein mechapri, because they achieve kapara for a person who sinned. That's not the purpose of an oil. So the truth is, it was great, this drasha that Rav Shimon came up with. The truth is, there's pirchas on these Kal V'chomers. The kuhu chamir ma'oila. The truth is, they could all be more chamer than an oil. The isbahu shtei achilos, because when it comes to oil, it's completely burnt. However, everything else is shtei achilos. Some of it's brought on this bach, and some of it's consumed by a kohen or non-kohen. My diyol de'ime Rav Shimon. So what was this whole flattering statement? If it's we had this pircha on him. So why? The fact that he took the pasuk and he read it from the back forward in order for there to be a chiddush, that is something in which is beautiful that he thought of that. So the kasha is, how could we possibly have a Kal V'chomer? So this whole notion doesn't make sense. Says Rashi the Kaimer, im ochel chutz l'chayim Kal V'chomer mamaiser. Say, oh, we know you're going to get malchus because of Kal V'chomer. So what do you mean? I thought we said ein onshim min adin, ein masir min adin. So your answer is isura ba'alma. What does that mean? Says Rashi, hayde kamaisi b'kul as hara b'Kal V'chomer l'isuri ba'alma kaimer v'lo malchus. It's just to say that Kal V'chomer, this should certainly be usher. It doesn't mean it's malchus, but it's still. It still shows that one is more chomer than the other, but it's only that this certainly should be aser, but not that should necessarily get malchus because they know shim in din and masir in din. Yomi Rava zar shaichem in an oila. If you have a non-kohen that ate an oila, if nezrika chutz l'chayma, or have Shimon loika chamesh, he holds that you actually get 5 sets of malchus. What are the 5? So Rashi says, chad mishum chutz l'chayma, he ate it outside of the wall. One is it was before the Zerika Saddam. One is he was a Zar Gomer. One is because he ate Chutz L'Kilayim as well. And another one is because he ate an Oila. So what's the problem? The problem is it says like it. It doesn't say this is an Einish. It doesn't say it's an Isser. It says this. So Chamish Isser and Havi. Now it doesn't really mean Malchus. It means there's 5 sins. But again, you're right. Einish Min is in Matzir Min Adin. Abhanan Tanan Elohein Loikin. It says Elohein Loikin. Says Rashi, "V'katani bikurim b'yochel kachik kadashim chutz l'kilayim." It says b'ferish in our Mishnah on Yud Gimel that bikurim is part of this list, and someone who ate kachik kadashim outside of the kilayim, you're going to be chayv malchus. What do you mean? Apparently, we're now through a kal v'chaymer as we continue to Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Ella kroy seruhu. This whole pasuk is extra. Michti, because let's see, Ksiv v'avesa sham. You went there v'yachal lefnei Hashem lokecha b'makam v'gaimer. So left there v'chanu l'suchel achom. Just say they're not able to eat them. Midahadim mafarish l'rachman l'lamli. Why does it have to go and explain all these different words again? So these words are extra for a drasha. El yachudi l'hu lavoy l'chol chad v'chad. To designate Allah for every single one of them. I'm going to stop there. But again, that's the point, that you are going to be chayiv for all of them. Okay. Let's see, maybe question TA 18. Maha Mokr shall be kurim tu'ud and tenufa. We didn't do that. Question 8. No. Adkan.